Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to check today's video out. Guys, today we're going to be talking about what it means when you're catching a lot of small bass. I mean, we've all been there before. It's like you get out there and you start fishing and you're catching a bunch of 8 to 10 inch fish, like lots of them, and can't seem to catch bigger ones. There's a reason for that. We're going to talk about that today and give you guys some tips and advice on how to upgrade the size if you're catching those small fish. And it's not as easy as it seems. It doesn't have anything to do with about going to a bigger lure. There's other variables, so we're going to talk about that in today's video. Also, guys, a couple quick housekeeping tips that you guys love to hear before every video. Just wanted to remind you that we've still got the President's Day sale going on. My Solar Bat Series RB2 and RB3 series sunglasses. If you get a pair right now, you can get them at 25% off, and any purchase over $100, you get a grab bag full of $30 worth of grab bag full of sunglasses. So I'll put the Solar Bat link in the description. And also, guys, Tackle Warehouse has got a huge spring fishing sale going on right now, 25% off on about anything on the website. I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description if you guys want to use that link. It's a good way to get some good tackle deals and help the channel out at the same time, so appreciate that. Sort of bright out here today, guys. I don't know if you can see it. We got about, probably 8 or 10 inches of snow here in Springfield the last couple of days, so it's pretty bright even though it's cloudy out. Okay, what does it mean when you're catching little ones? Now here, this is a situation that, especially if you're a traditional bass fisherman and you fish the bank a lot, you run into this a lot more than you do like in offshore situations where you'll get on a stretch of bank or, flipping and pitching something, and you just catch 8 and 10 inchers one after another. And it's like you upgrade, you try different lures, not much you can do about it. It just seems like there's just nothing but small fish there. One of the things that I can tell you is if you get into a situation where you're catching just a lot of small fish, sort of bright out and put these sunglasses on, but when you're in a situation like, you're going down a bank and you maybe worked a quarter mile that shoreline and you're mixing it up, you throwing a crankbait, throwing a topwater, flipping and pitching something, and you're just catching these 8, 10, 12 inch fish all the time. You're not catching anything besides that. There's a couple different things that you sort of have to take in consideration. First of all, it could be the depth that you're fishing. A lot of times, smaller fish, they will tend to group up a lot and use certain depth zones. So from what I have found, a lot of times when you're catching those small fish like that, sometimes you're fishing too shallow. And one of the easy remedies for that is just to back out and move a little bit deeper. I remember one deal, I was fishing at Table Rock. This was just like, I think it was last year or sometime in the fall time. And I was working down this long stretch of rocky bank, and I was throwing that Mega Bass Super Z2 that runs probably, 4 feet deep or so. And I was just catching them one after the other, but they were all 8, 10, 12 inch fish. They were just, small bass. And I tried upgrading. I put on a bigger crankbait. I tried, larger profile lures, nothing like with that. So finally I backed off and I got out in probably 8 to 10 foot of water off those same banks there. And I started throwing a finesse jig. And it's like I started upgrading the size of the fish. Instead of catching 8, 10, and 12 inchers, I started catching some 2, 2 1/4, 2.5 pounders simply by moving, nice simple adjustment, just moving out a little bit deeper. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing that I have found, and this has probably been a little bit more common than moving out deeper, is the fact that that's what's there. There's nothing but small fish where you're fishing at. And more than not, probably the number one piece of advice I can give you guys, if you're fishing down a stretch, and I don't care what type of cover you're fishing, and you're catching nothing but little ones, it's time to move. Because those, for whatever reason, the conditions, the water temperature, water clarity, cover, time of the year, whatever it may be, it's just small fish are using it. It could have something to do with the food chain. Maybe the bait is there that's smaller, that's not attracting the bigger fish. But if I'm catching just lots of little ones and nothing else, I usually pick up the trolling motor and I'll move to a different part of the lake. Now, a lot of times you don't have to move to completely long way away, but try some different type of structures within that same area. If you're catching a lot of little fish, cranking rocky banks or cranking riprap bank, move over and try to find some flatter sections and concentrate on fishing some isolated cover, like some isolated laydowns. That can be good. Sometimes it's a matter of getting into a different part of the lake where there's a different water clarity, getting in some cleaner water, getting in some dirtier water. Sometimes that can make a difference. And the rare exception that we talked about before, as far as, you know, I talked about at starting the video, if you upgrade the size of your bait, you're going to catch bigger ones. There is some truth to that, but there's not a lot of truth to it when you're catching nothing but little ones. Now, I've been in situations before where I'll catch a 12-inch bass and then I'll catch a 3-pounder, or I'll catch a 10-inch bass and then I'll catch a couple 2.5-pounders. If you've got fish in there and you're catching fish on a certain bait, and there are a diversity of different sizes, not necessarily they're big fish, but you know, they're over 2 pounds. A lot of times it's just a matter of just, you know, upgrading the bait size if you're catching some, you know, 2-pound class fish with what you're doing. But if you're catching nothing but little ones and you're not even getting any 2-pounders, usually upgrading to a larger lure size is not going to do you that much good. So one of my favorite things to do, like I said, if I'm catching an occasional 2 or 2.5 pounder, that is usually my first move, is to go to a larger bait to consistently get those bigger ones. But if I'm catching 8 and 10 inchers, you know, it doesn't really help out a lot. Also, pay attention to the species of fish that you catch. A lot of times, if you're catching a lot of these small fish, sometimes they can be Kentuckies, largemouth or Kentuckies, and even smallmouth if you got a mixed species. But you know, that's a big indicator too, that, you know, there's just a lot of different type of fish that are small or using that particular zone. So it's really a combination, guys. It's a combination of changing your water, the water depth that you're fishing, maybe changing the type of cover that you're fishing, or maybe changing, you know, a completely different part of the lake. I'll give you guys a prime example of what I'm talking about here. I was fishing up at Stockton Lake last spring, and the water was high. It was flooded in the bushes, and Stockton Lake's a really good bush flipping lake when the water's high. And I was flipping bushes, I was mixing it up, I was using creature baits, I was using jigs, brush hogs, and I couldn't catch any keepers. I was catching the fire out of them. I mean, I was catching like 30, 40 fish, but I didn't catch anything that was even over 13 inches long. They were all like 10 or 12 inches, and I was flipping heavy cover, like flipping in the middle of these thick bushes, and you set the hook with a full-size jig and it'd be a little 10-inch bass on there. So anything that I did, I tried, you know, not only flipping and pitching, but I tried some other type of lures, and it was nothing but small fish. Water visibility was about probably 3 feet. So I packed it up and I moved and I run to the as far as I could get up to this creek where the water visibility changed. So the water visibility went from about 3 feet to about 6 inches to where I was fishing. And I got up there and I started flipping shallow bushes, like lay down logs and some bushes that were in like less than 2 foot of water with 6 inches of visibility. And I went to a big full-size black and blue jig, and I immediately started catching good ones. Instead of catching 10 and 12 inchers, I was catching 2 and 3 pounders. So a lot of times it's just making that movement into different type of setup within the lake. Water clarities usually have a lot to do with it. But general, guys, just the overall review, if you're catching nothing but little ones, just get out of there. Just don't try to figure out how to catch bigger ones, because most of the time there's not any quality fish in there if you're catching a big number of small ones, and just find a different part of the lake. One other thing I'll tell you here, this is another little example. I was fishing at Lake of the Ozarks last fall, and I was catching them on a little crankbait throwing next to the boat docks. And I was catching them just right and left, but all of them 10 and 12 inches long. That was it. And water visibility was probably about 1.5 feet or something. And it's like every dock, I'd catch 2 or 3 off of every single dock I went to, throwing that little crankbait down the side of the dock. Same thing. Eventually I bailed out of there, ran up the river, got into some dirty water, started flipping a jig on some shallow docks, and started catching good ones with just that adjustment. So anyway, guys, a little bit of info there. Hope it helps you guys out, and we'll talk later. See you.